Alright, everybody, you guys know what to do. Gonna get W's in the chat if you guys can hear me. It looks like the mic is good on my end, but for any of you who know the history of the show, this is basically a requirement. You guys know it's a requirement that I need to ask about the mic. Got the W? Perfect. Beautiful. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, NR 2055 CB. Appreciate you guys, man. And welcome, everybody, to the Cutline All-Star Race Edition. I am your host, Armani DePaul. We just got finished with watching the All-Star Race. Now, I won't keep you guys hold for too long. Let me introduce to you our guest for this weekend. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a description for this guy. This guy makes some great NASCAR videos. However, I discovered him from his NFL recap for the 2024 season. That's how I found this guy. And then I was like, damn, this guy makes some good NFL videos. And I saw, I was like, oh, he's mostly a NASCAR channel. And I knew that I wanted to get him on eventually. Let's bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Vince Moscar. Vince, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How we doing? How's everybody doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just got finished watching the All-Star race. What'd you think about the race?
Well, I thought it was probably the best All-Star race at a short track. I'm usually not like a I guess I'll just start with, like, I'm not a huge, like, the All-Star race should be at a short track kind of guy.
Really?
You know, like don't get me wrong, North Wilkesboro is great. But you know, some of the beauty of the short track is the lap traffic, and you know, when the field is cut in half, you know, you kind of lose that a little bit. But I think this was probably the best short track All-Star race that we've had, right? If you think about Bristol in 2020 and then these last 3 years of North Wilkesboro, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good race. I agree. I think this was the best All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, though that bar was set pretty low, all things considered. See the chat right here. Noah, All-Star game doesn't work for a sport where all the All-Stars are already in the race together every Sunday. I mean, yeah, I feel like that'd be an easy fix. You just lower the qualifications to get into the All-Star race. But, I mean, even, like, throughout history, I mean, there's always been, like, 20, 23 cars in the race. So, I mean, I don't feel like it's something new. What do you think?
Yeah, I like having a race with a little bit less, a little bit, like, better quality. Like, but I think, like I said, I think it works better, like, on a bigger track where it's, like, you know, like, I think the All-Star race should just be at Charlotte. Right? Like, I think, especially now with the, you know, Charlotte is really good with the next gen. I think it would be nice.
Have you ever...
give North Wilkesboro a points race.
I do agree on the points paying race. Also, you would have a great conversation with my buddy NASCAR Pinion. He's adamant that the All-Star race should go to Charlotte too. Drafting King 22. We don't need a caution with 30 laps to go. I will get to that for, like, my first topic of the cut line. We'll get to that a little bit where, you know, start really talking about what, you know, the All-Star race really should represent. I mean, the title of the episode, should the All-Star race be taken seriously? As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to dive into that right now. So you see I have the results here for the race. Of course, Christopher Bell got the win. Joey Logano, I had Ross Chastain picked as the winner. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get it done, but hey, he was close, especially after that spin. But I'm kind of sidetracking for a moment. I want to talk about the purpose of the All-Star race just for a moment. You know, we complain a lot as NASCAR fans about gimmicks for NASCAR. You know, the playoffs, the low horsepower, turning every track into Daytona or Talladega, you name it. It feels like NASCAR has turned into gimmick central, if you will. And I agree with that more times than not. Like, Vince and I were just having a conversation before we went on air in terms of, like, the playoff format. Or even, like, the cars, for example. You know, I'm a racing fan. I'm NASCAR first and foremost, but I enjoy motorsports as a whole. You'll catch me watching F1. You'll catch me watching IndyCar. You'll catch me watching anything that has four wheels. I mean, just this morning, I was down at Homestead Miami Speedway calling sports car racing. and the equivalent of Formula 4 racing up in the broadcast booth for FAR USA. So, I enjoy racing in general. If it's got four wheels and I can drive it, I'm probably going to enjoy it. So I enjoy racing in its purest form. However, I do understand that it's an all-star race, it's an all-star game, and typically, those are meant just for fun. You're not supposed to really be taking it seriously. There's fun activities here and there that you don't see on a normal game or normal race. I'm going to use the NBA All-Star Game for an example, or even the Pro Bowl for an example, because that's the equivalent of the All-Star Game for the NFL. What are you seeing the players doing? Fun activities, trying to get the best completion percentage, or, shooting or throwing the ball down in the middle. Or even in the NBA, you got the 3-point challenge, or you got the dunk challenge. You're not going to see this in a normal regular season game. You sure as hell is not going to see it in a playoff game. But it's a time just to have fun, to let loose a little bit, if you will. And given how competitive sports can be, there really isn't an opportunity to kind of just let loose and, in a weird way, kind of remember what sports is about. Sports is about, we're all trying to have fun. Obviously the competitors are trying to take this seriously, as they should, but there is a fun aspect to it as well. I mean, not everything should be taken seriously, at least for an all-star race. And in my opinion, I'm kind of fine with all the gimmicks, for example, for the all-star race. Now, this is the one race that I'm okay with gimmicks. I don't like gimmicks on my points races. I don't like gimmicks in my playoff races. I don't even really like gimmicks in the Clash, because the Clash should start setting the tone for the beginning of the season. But for the All-Star race, I'm perfectly fine with it. I mean, again, it's just, there's no points on the line. You're at a short track, close to home. Here's a chance at $1 million. No points on the line. No real season implications, if you will. Just go out there and have fun. And I'm fine with that. I mean, you even see it, we don't really get heat races for anything besides Bowman Gray. You don't get, promoters cautions like this in any other race, unless you want to count a phantom caution as a promoter caution. You don't really get this kind of stuff anywhere else, but for the All-Star race, I'm fine with it. Let the guys have fun, let the drivers have fun, let the industry have some fun. And especially with how kind of gloomy it's felt like for the past month and a half, 2 months. Really, if you want to go back to the end of 2024 for the last 6-7 months. Kind of something like that, if you will. So, in terms of the gimmicks, at least for the All-Star race, I'm fine with it. Vince, what do you think about just the gimmicks as a whole for the All-Star race? Like the promoter's caution, or should the All-Star race be taken just as seriously as a points-paying race? Or are you fine with them just kind of getting a little loose with this race?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with it. For the most part, I think where it starts to, concern me a little bit is when it's like, hey, we're testing this thing out to, maybe use it next year, because that's what we saw with like the low horsepower package. I think that was 2019 or something like that, 2018, in that All-Star race, where it's like, we're testing something out that's like crazy gimmick, but like they're really like, it's really like a trial run for like actually implementing it. If it's something like this promoter's caution, which I don't think like NASCAR is like actually going to say like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a new rule where we could just throw a caution whenever we want. Like it's fine for that, just for an all-star race, just for an exhibition.
Yeah, I agree. And I see some of the comments here. Nicholas, way to go. Christopher Bell, let's go. And next year they should have $3 million and have it at Charlotte. That's another thing too. I mean, with inflation and just how expensive, just the sport is as a whole. And even with the in-season tournament coming up in just a couple months, I mean, that's another $1 million prize. It almost feels like, which is crazy to think about, because if someone gave me $1 million, like, hey, you want $1 million? I'm going to take it in a heartbeat. But it feels like $1 million just isn't that much anymore. I mean, what was the equivalent? Like $3 million, like he said, like $3 million to, that would have been, well, like 20 years ago. So that's another thing as well, is I do think that the prize pool does need to be bumped up a little bit, maybe to give the drivers a little more incentive. I mean, $1 million is still $1 million, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, these guys are all millionaires. These guys are all set for life, and again, they have another opportunity to get another $1 million in their bank account just a couple months with this in-season tournament.
Yeah, certainly.
Grizzly J, this is an exhibition race. Stop talking about the caution. This is probably the least crazy thing they have done at the All-Star race. Remember the stages and eliminations after the stages? Yes, I remember it, but do you remember the backlash when they announced the promoter's caution just a couple weeks ago? Fans were all over the place saying that this is ridiculous. They can't fix the short track package, which I thought, we agree this was the best North Wilkesboro race, for the All-Star race, but they were complaining left and right. And again, for the promoter's caution, which I agree. I mean, I remember we talked about Charlotte. I remember, I think it was 2016, 2017, where they would inverse the field. 5 drivers or 2 drivers would get eliminated after each stage. They've done a lot more complex stuff. I mean, they had the option tire. I believe it was the 2019 race. They had the first rendition of an option tire. So, I mean, I agree. They've done a lot crazier things, but again, it is the least crazy thing they've done, but I think you kind of forget the backlash that NASCAR received when they announced the promoter's caution. Antonio, I see you in the chat. Danica Patrick coming back to win the NASCAR championship. Yeah. When pigs fly. When pigs fly. Alright, moving on. And if any of you guys want to know where I would put that, I would put the All-Star race and the gimmicks above the cut line. Probably the only time you'll ever see me put a gimmick in racing above the cut line. But moving on to something I want to talk about that's below the cut line, and that is this incident that you see on your screen right here between Chandler Smith and Lane Riggs for the win, and that actually allowed, well, yeah, Chandler Smith and Lane Riggs, but really Corey Heim was involved as well. You see Corey Heim spins out after a battle with Lane Riggs. Chandler Smith kind of slithers by and takes home the win. And I've seen a lot of back and forth, and before I really get into my opinions on this, I don't know if this is newer fans coming from IndyCar or F1 or other forms of motorsport, or just they're brand new to motorsport. But it feels like even bumps and runs are just not viewed in a positive light anymore amongst NASCAR fans. I mean, think about it. 2018, Joey Logano bumping Martin Truex Jr. out the way of Martinsville. Now, it's Joey Logano. Anything he does is going to receive a massive amount of hate. I get it. But people were like, that is one of the dirtiest moves they have ever seen. And it's it's just a normal bump and run. I mean, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the normal bump and run? And I just remember throughout the years where you got bumps and runs, or you had just hard racing for the win, and there is a lot more backlash, which to me is kind of interesting because it is NASCAR. This is really in the DNA of the sport. I mean, Chandler Smith, Lane Riggs, Corey Heim, it's been a lot worse. Go look at the 1979 Daytona 500 finish. So, I do think that modern fans are just not a fan of all the contact racing. And I'm not sure why that's the case. Again, maybe they're coming from different disciplines of motorsport. Maybe they're just new fans that just don't like it, period. Now, I'm not sure. Now, I've been a fan since 2005, 2006, around that time frame. So, I grew up in that bump and run, slipping and sliding era of NASCAR. I remember 2007, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, they were beating and banging left and right, and that was acceptable. Or you even had Kyle Busch and Dale Jr. I mean, yeah, Kyle Busch wrecking Dale Jr., of course, that's what made him become a villain. But if that was any other driver, probably everyone would say that's just a racing incident. But you don't get that. You get a lot more backlash. Now, maybe that is because of social media. But that is something I want to point out. Now, where do I stand in this finish right here? I personally think that I've gone over and looked at it a couple times, and I always need to say you do have to put a little bit of context in the last lap because, let me put an example. So I was announcing one of the races today for Formula Cars. Yesterday, these two drivers went side by side going into turn 10 at the Homestead Road Course. Typically, you shouldn't be going side by side, but it was towards the end of the race, so you got to put that context of this could be your last shot to win this race. So with that added context, you know, it doesn't look great. It definitely looks like Lane Riggs just on the surface just cleaned out Corey Heim, and then Heim, gets hit, takes a damage. And I always say, if you're going to clean out a driver, you better win the race. And the fact that Lane Riggs couldn't even do that makes it look even worse. However, I'm fine with what he did. It's the last lap of the race. It's a short track. It's not like he did that at Kansas. It's not like he Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano, or vice versa, I believe, in 2015. It's not like it's that. And if Corey Heim doesn't spin out here, and he just keeps it straight, no one's complaining about this. Well, actually they might, going back to what I said previously. But, or even if Lane Riggs wins this race, the backlash wouldn't be as severe. But again, it's short track racing. This is what we want out of short track racing. And it's for the win. Again, given that extra context. Like Antonio said, Rubbin Racing, good move. I'm fine with it. Now, in terms of overall racecraft, not the best racecraft shown out of Lane Riggs, especially because he's a short track guy. But overall, I'm fine with the move. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Me personally. Vince, what do you think about this? And I want to go back to what I said previously. When we were off the air, you said you started watching the sport around 2015. Now, I know we have around the same opinion about the playoff format, but I want to talk a little bit about racing etiquette. NASCAR's grown up, throughout the years. It's been beating and banging. Rubbin's Racing, like Tony said in the chat. Where do you stand in terms of really like an incident like this where a lot of, maybe even old school fans like myself would say, yeah, maybe it's a little bit on the egregious side, but it's nothing too bad. Where do you stand on something like this, like as a somewhat newer fan?
Yeah, I think, it's important to like think about, like you mentioned, okay, so if this contact is made and then we don't have the spin there, then nobody's really like talking about this as like a dirty move, right? This is just sort of like you push up your competitor up close to the wall on in the final laps for the win, right? But I do think it's like it becomes a little bit different when you have that loss of control, because it's tough to say if it was like it's tough to say without driving the car if it was savable after that contact. So maybe it is savable, and it's like, okay, then he should have just saved it and there's no problem. But if it's not savable, then this is something that's like this is like probably bad etiquette, right? This is probably bad racecraft. So it's tough to say without having driven the car, and like knowing exactly what the feelings were in the car for Heim, but I do think like pushing pushing up a driver up against the fence, like I don't see a big problem with that, right? I think that's even like a skillful thing to do, right? Like there's some drivers who are out of their lane, and then they just sort of fail at it, right? And maybe they just slam into the fence. Maybe they they end up not pushing up the driver enough, right? And they still have enough speed to make a pass or whatever. So it is skillful, but you have to be super precise to pull it off correctly and not make your opponent spin out and make it an effective move. So I do get the complaints a little bit, but but like I do agree with you when you say that like there's a lot of like complaining about bump and runs and stuff like this. Like, yeah, the bump and run is, something that, especially at like Martinsville, it should be acceptable if it's done in the correct way, right? I think the reason you get a little bit of those complaints, like for instance for the Truex incident, is because like Truex is like completely sideways coming off, the turn, uh, I
The
believe.
driver in this car.
But yeah, so it's like there, you have to be perfect at it if you're gonna do it. So, um, I think that's the key, and if you do it too much, then like you're gonna get criticism, and that's somewhat valid. If you don't do it enough, then you're not gonna make it pass.
I really do like how you went into detail, about how precise you have to be with making a move like that. And, again, kind of going more in depth about that, like the race etiquette, but not even just that, like the race craft about, just trying to set up that move. How precise, like you mentioned, how precise you got to be. I mean, even going off the generic, I think we kind of underestimate how precise these drivers have to be in the race car. Like, they are on the edge. Even when there's downforce galore, like with the truck or the next gen, you still really can't make a mistake throughout the lap. If you do, I mean, we see when it costs you just in this all-star race alone, and we saw it just now with, obviously, Lane Riggs and Corey Heim. So, again, that precision that as a driver you need to have lap after lap, and, at that point, Lane Riggs just wasn't precise enough, and it cost him and Heim. But it benefited his teammates, so front row probably isn't complaining overall, but I'm pretty sure that 34 would have rather he been in victory lane rather than the 38.
Yeah, and this is like one of those things where like you can see, like if you watch Kyle Larson when he's trying to push somebody up the track, you can see he's very good at it. He's very good. He like sometimes you do have like those mistakes, right? But I think I included this in one of my videos. It was on the Kyle Larson video I did. I think it was Darlington in 22 or 23. Was the incident between him and Chastain, and so there was there was Larson was on the inside for one restart, and he pushes Chastain up the track, and then he takes the lead or something like this. And then like one of these next restarts, Chastain's on the inside, and he tries to push Larson up the track, and he slams into Larson and into the wall. So, those are those subtle little differences between like those top drivers and guys who are just like Cup Series drivers.
I agree. Nicholas, yeah, I agree that Lane Riggs probably should have just did a bump and run for the win. And while I don't get why people are complaining about a bump and run, remember when Dale Earnhardt did that same thing? Yeah, but you got to keep in mind as well, back in Dale's, like when he was racing, I mean, now we see him kind of, in a positive light because, unfortunately he did pass away. But back then, Earnhardt was a polarizing driver. I mean, yeah, he had fans. He was still one of the most popular drivers in the garage. But who won, I believe it was 17 or 18 most popular driver awards? Bill Elliott. Not Dale Earnhardt. He only has one, which came in 2001, unfortunately. But, I mean, it was Bill Elliott who was so popular. It's why Chase Elliott is as popular as he is, because his dad was even more popular right now. So, and again, it's because he's so controversial. That's why. And Nicholas, again, remember Jeff Gordon versus Rusty Wallace at Bristol back in 2002? Hasn't anyone else done it playing NASCAR Thunder 2004 or 2003 and NASCAR Heat 5? And again, yeah, it's just, it's interesting. I would love if social media had been around back then, at least to the level it is now, just to see the reaction when you see a bump and run from, like, Gordon or Rusty Wallace, or like, you saw Dale Earnhardt versus Terry Labonte, or, like in the 80s, like Jeff, or like Darrell Waltrip versus Dale Earnhardt, you name it. What would the reaction been back then for something like that? Would it be just as bad as it is now, or would it be more accepted? I wonder.
Yeah, I think you might see. It's tough because like you see like the extremes are really brought out from social media. So like I think you like if we had social media back in the day, I think you would see like if you looked on Twitter, you would see like people being like, "Oh, Jeff Gordon, what is this? This was terrible," you know?
Raging Knuckles, nice to see the Pegasus fly into victory lane again. That the first time Mobile 1 has been in victory lane since, I want to say since Harvick won Richmond in 2022. I don't think Pegasus has been in victory lane since. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, but I believe it has been 3 years since Mobile 1's been in victory lane. Well, speaking of victory lane, let's move on to race weekend rankings, everybody. Now, if you guys want to follow along, got the All-Star Race Weekend rankings link in the description, as well as the 2025 Race Weekend rankings in the description as well. We got 3 races to rank here. This one was weird just because, you have the All-Star race, you have the truck race, and then I kind of went back and forth. Do I really want to include the All-Star Open? I decided to include the All-Star Open anyway because it's typically categorized as its own separate race. So, let's get started here. I will go on a preface this and saying I don't think we really had a bad race this weekend. Now, some were clearly going to be better than others. Obviously, there's a tier list for a reason. But I don't think any of these 3 races were bad. Maybe not barn burners, but none of them are, when we get to the 2025 tier list, none of them are really going to go below C tier. It's probably going to be mid C tier for the lowest one. And I do think all of these were pretty close in the sense of the quality of the racing and for different finishes. There's all different aspects that kind of put them close to one another. So, let's start off with the 3rd spot. And I'm going to give it to the truck race. Like I mentioned, all of these are pretty close. Honestly, I'll probably change this. Even when I get off air, I might go back and change this. But I thought the truck race was fairly solid. Guys battling for the win, like Corey Heim. I know he led a lot of laps, but then he had even got guys like Roger Carruth up there once again. Of course, he had the front row guys up there, and the finish was electrifying. We can't deny that finish wasn't at least electric. So, but a little bit of sloppiness as well. I tend to dock that just a little bit. Martinsville is a prime example of, Daytona for ARCA is another prime example where if the race just kind of gets sloppy, especially towards the finish, I will hold that against it. And this isn't to the extent of those races, but I do have to take that into account. So I'm putting the truck race in the 3rd spot. For the 2nd spot, I'm going to give it to the All-Star Open, which is interesting because I was having a conversation with a friend before the All-Star race began where typically the All-Star Open is the more exciting race between it and, its older brother, the All-Star race. But this year, we know the issues with the next-gen car. I'm not going to talk about it. You can go look at Twitter galore. There's probably 500 people talking about it. But anyway, one thing about the All-Star Open, and I kind of hold it back a little bit, is, well, yes, there was a lot of excitement as to who was going to win the race. Was it going to be SVG, Carson Hocevar? You had the different strategies in there playing a factor. John Hunter Nemechek working his way through the field. Can Bubba Wallace come from 14th up towards a transfer spot? However, when the leader got away, when he got clean air, it was over. SVG, gone. Carson Hocevar, gone. There really wasn't a battle for the win. It was, if you're on pit road first, or if you're in the lead first, see ya. Just go set up for the All-Star race now. There was a lot of action throughout, and again, the strategy did play a big factor, but the fact that the leader really couldn't get away, as a matter of fact, I think I just talked myself into swapping these two. Because at least the truck race, he had a little more interesting battles for the lead. So, yep, I'm going to move the All-Star race down, or the Open, excuse me, down to 3rd. The truck race to 2nd, which means the All-Star race goes to the top spot. I thought it was a solid race. You know, shorter race, 250 laps. I think the competitor, or not the competitor, the promoter's caution was done as well as you can ask for. They were spread out nice and evenly. You know, you had instances where you knew it was going to come out with around 20 laps to go, but you didn't know if it was going to come out on this lap. You didn't know it was going to come out on that lap. There was enough difference in terms of, you know, you didn't know what was going to happen versus you knew what was going to happen. And the battle for the lead, unlike the All-Star Open, was not clear-cut in a way. I mean, Larson was up there. Logano was up there. Chastain looked like he was going to get up there. And, of course, Bell got up there late and got the win. So, you had more action for the lead. There was 3-4 wide racing for some reason. Especially 4 wide in North Wilkesboro was crazy. But plenty of action throughout the pack. And I'm confident that, you know, I swapped these two around. I think that the All-Star race should firmly stay at the top spot. So here you go. This is the All-Star Race Weekend rankings. Got the link in the description. Show us your race weekend rankings. Go down, share it on social media, and we'll tag it along. Moving on to the 2025 season. We'll make this one fairly quick. Like I mentioned, I don't think any of these races were bad. You know, D and F tier, bad race. Never want to see something like that again. C tier, solid. Probably going to forget about it in a month from now. B, good. A, great. S, near perfect. So where do I want to put these races at here? I'm going to put the truck race. I'll put the truck race towards the top of C tier. Again, finish a little sloppy, but the racing overall was fairly solid. The All-Star Open, I'm going to put in B tier. Or excuse me, at the bottom of C tier. Very bland. You know, there was action, but the leader, again, just got away. And the All-Star race, I'll put at the end of B tier. Again, nothing spectacular, but I don't think it was bad. It was a solid race. I'm going to put it in C tier. And this is the 2025 race weekend ranking so far. Honestly, the more we go into C tier, I'm probably just going to end up jumbling them all together because, again, C tier is the forgettable tier. Wasn't bad, it wasn't good, probably going to forget about it, in all honesty. So that's where you're going to find a lot of these. I try to rank the C tier, but there's a lot I just don't remember about these races where it's like, I'm really nitpicking, so you can kind of bunch up the C tier together. Now, D down to F and then B up to S, you can rank those. C, I'm fine with where it's at. Vince, what do you think about the tier list? What race would you say has been the best of the weekend? And would you say any of those races, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? In terms of where I had them ranked.
Yeah, so just in transparency, I typically don't watch the truck race. Sometimes I watch Xfinity, but so between the Open and the All-Star race, I typically, like, I agree with your statement that, like, usually the Open is better. And I think, like, I think besides the lead, I think there was a lot of good stuff in the Open. Like, I think there was a lot of, like, chaos, sort of, like, in the middle and in the back, and there was a little bit of fighting for, you know, that cutoff, you know, top 2 spots, you know, even though it wasn't really fighting for the lead. But yeah, I do agree, like, you know, like the lack of fighting for the lead was a problem. So I don't know, between the Open and the All-Star race, it's tough for me to say. I think I would have them very even. I think maybe I'd give the edge to the All-Star race.
And there you go, folks. That is my 2025 race weekend rankings. Again, a little bit weird because, you know, you got the All-Star race, you got the Open, and then you got the truck race. I mean, you can rank the truck and the Cup, but I'm fine with putting the Open in this tier list. Joshua8824 Racing said, what about the Cars Tour? I mean, honestly, I didn't get to watch the Cars Tour race, and even if I did, it would feel weird just having one Cars Tour race on the tier list and, you know, just the rest ARCA, Truck, Xfinity Cup, it would feel weird just to have that one Cars Tour race just sitting there. But let me know what you guys would want the Cars Tour, maybe in some future episodes if they're on network television again. Let me know. Now, before we go, you guys already know what to do. You guys see underneath Vince's webcam there, the two for the YouTube and for his Twitter. Vince, mentioned before, the floor is all yours. Now, while you get to show off, if you will, that's the best way I can describe this segment, where I allow the guests just to show off. But while we're at it, everyone, go subscribe to Vince. He's got some great content over on his YouTube channel. Again, like I said, I saw this, the first video I saw this guy was his NFL video, and like I said, great video, got me engaged, and I think, you know, kind of going off a tangent to different sport, you know, I feel like NFL, it can be very hit or miss in terms of the content, but I very much enjoyed that video, and looking into your NASCAR content as well, I thought it was great. But hey, the floor is all yours, man.
Yeah, so I'll continue making videos. I've got something in the works. Might take another week or two. It'll be a NASCAR video, so keep your eyes open for that, especially if you're a Kyle Busch fan. I think you'll like that video. Other than that, yeah, I'll probably just keep going, alternate between football and NASCAR, and I've got a lot of good stuff in the wings. I think in my notepad for especially for this summer, because I'll have the summer off, so I'll be back to like almost weekly uploads. So yeah, definitely check it out. I put a good amount of effort into my videos. They're not professionally edited, but they are, you know, thoroughly edited. So you know, definitely take a look, and then also, you know, if you like my Twitter, you know, take a follow there. But other than that, thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on, man. I mean, this was awesome. That's going to do it for us here on the Cutline, folks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All-Star Weekend is in the books. And next week, oh, I'm so excited for next week. It's going to be the greatest day in racing. The Monaco Grand Prix, I believe it's going to be on next week. Then you got the Indianapolis 500, the biggest race in the world. And then rounding it out with the Coca-Cola 600. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be another probably late episode, you know, especially if we get red flags or whatever for the Coke 600. But that's going to do it for me here, folks. You guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. The handles are underneath as well. Check out dailydownforce.com for all the amazing content. Like and subscribe as well. Follow us on all social platforms. And that's going to do it for us, folks. We're going to wave the checkered flag. This is the Cutline. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we will see you next week for the Coca-Cola 600.